We were not aware at first that the hull had drawn anything unusual out of the sea. We were all just standing around, watching with only mild interest as the arm of the boat's crane dragged the heaving net up and onto the deck, splattering the legs of the nearest fisherman with a shower of seawater as it did so. The net was steadily and mechanically drawn open, and the squirming, writhing fish began to tumble from the sides and out onto the floor as the fishermen backed up and away to higher deck. The rain at the time was no more than a drizzle, but as I watched the fish spill out and over the boat, I nonetheless had to pull my hood a little tighter around my head, a feeble defense as the wind blew it bitterly sideways and into my face. The weather, as it is now, is pretty typical of how it's been for the last few nights. I turn and look around, tilting my face away from the direction of the rain. I don't see much. To give you an idea of our surroundings, try to picture a world of grey, dark and shadowy clouds from horizon to horizon cover the sky, though the horizons themselves are hidden behind tumbling swirls and walls of mist and fog. The sea churns softly but steadily, frothing white against the hull of the trawler, but grey to greyish blue everywhere else. The sea is all there is. In the first couple of weeks, we saw other boats occasionally, but we don't even see them anymore. Not this far out from the Canadian coast. Aside from the occasional drifting ice, there is nothing. Formless, shapeless water and cloud. And let me tell you, 4 weeks into a 6-week round trip, 6 hours into an 8-hour shift, the mood on the deck at dusk is as grey as our immediate surroundings. I'll give you a quick rundown of the crew, but there's no need to memorize their names. I'll try to make obvious who's who as we go, but might be useful, for reference at least, is my reasoning. There's Troy, our intrepid captain. Lazy fucker, scruffy one too. No idea how he came to command a ship, even one so modest as ours. Feels wrong to even call it a ship, to be honest. There's only about a dozen of us in the crew. There's myself, go by Charlie, chief officer. 90% of the responsibilities of the captain with 50% of the pay. Go figure. The trawler's engineer, a redhead we refer to as NG for a laugh. Then there's the operators of the machinery, Brett and Bryn, both big dudes, Saskatchewan boys through and through, though I'm pretty sure that Troy hired them for the alliteration of their names alone. 5 fishermen, Sean, Scott, Omar, Ferris, and some other lad. Can't remember his name off the top of my head. And there's the chef Ken, though we sometimes just call him chef, like in South Park. Decent guys really, every one of them, all things considered. Only one fight since we left dock, which is pretty good going in my experience. It was really more of a scuffle anyway. Everyone bar chef and Captain Troy are on the deck at the moment that the net in question is opened. There's no particular reason for this. Some of the night shift crew are just up a little early, and there are very few other places to actually be. The hauling ins are, tragically, the most exciting features of the day. Bryn turns and locks the winch into place, stepping away from the crane's control for a closer look at the hull. His hair is blown about his face, eyes squinted as the fish flop and slip out and over the lower deck. And that's when we first see it. We see the thing that the net has drawn up from the deep. Appearing at first as an oily black mass behind the silver, absorbing the low level of light instead of reflecting it. It becomes clearer and clearer as the fish disperse. It's pretty big. I think to myself that we might have caught ourselves a baby whale or something. But no, that's not it.
What the fuck is that?
Shouts Bryn from the opposite side. He has a better view than me, I think. He turns to the man beside him, to NG, and gestures to the object as the fish fall. His mouth moves and NG replies, but I cannot make out their words. The others step closer now, staring in awe at the thing that sits silently in the center of the dock, dripping onto the fish below. I'd say it was roughly 6 or 7 feet long, by my estimation, and maybe 2/3 of that length in height. It appears as a roughly hexagonal cuboid, pointed at either end, like an enormous dark crystal. This is no crystal, however, no precious gem. It looks sick, wrong almost. The surface is not shiny or sharp or near translucent, nothing like that. I hesitate to make the likeness, but it looks kind of like skin, oily and black, and unless my eyes deceive me, which, to be fair, is entirely possible, I swear I see the thing briefly throb. What the hell? Did anyone else see that? Bryn shouts again from the opposite side. His eyes meet mine, and they flash a bright and pale blue, almost grey in their coloring. Aye, I reply, loud over the wind. I fucking saw it. He hops down the short steps to the deck, kicking aside the fish as he approaches. Ferris and another of the fishermen, that fellow whose name escapes me, jump down too for a closer look. Hey! I call out. Get away from that thing. We don't know what it is. In a classic display of respect and deference to my position, I am thoroughly ignored. I sigh and looked over to my right, raising a hand to Brett. He stands further up the boat, behind the controls of the machine that will open and lower the end of the loading deck, swallowing all the fish into our cold storage. I catch his attention and I gesture for him to lock it up and leave the controls well alone. He does so, and I step down onto the deck in turn. Might as well go for a closer look if that's what everyone else is doing. Bryn slaps his hand across the object, peeling it away at once with a sickening squelch and a laugh of disgust. Thin, sticky, saliva-like strands of dark fluid connect his palm to the object's surface. I shake my head in disapproval as I circle around, allowing myself a good long look. Bryn chuckles and puts his hand out towards Ferris, who promptly backs away in revulsion. He instead grabs Angie in a headlock and tussles his hair, much to the engineer's dismay. The object is certainly nothing I'm familiar with. I've never seen it in no nautical books neither. Could it be a clump of oil? All frozen together perhaps? But in such a shape, does oil even freeze? Bryn! I call out, and the big fella looks up, releasing Angie as he does so. The freedman mutters and curses as he brushes his hair and pulls his hood back up over his ginger mop. How does it feel then? This thing, what does it feel like? You're welcome to touch it yourself, Charlie. He replies with a laugh. I grimace at him. I'd rather not, bud. Tell me, how's it feel? He opens and closes his palm. It's warm, he says. Feels like, I don't know, how I'd expect the skin of a seal to feel, I guess. A seal. Interesting comparison. But whatever. And warm. Here's some kind of scientific anomaly. That's what I reckon, says Brett as he scratches his chin. Well, that's helpful, I reply. Personally, I hate it. I think we should just dump it back into the sea. It goes deeper than that though. This thing, for reasons I can't quite explain, unnerves and unsettles me in a way I don't really understand. It's sickeningly out of place in its current position, in the center of the deck. It does not belong. This suggestion, however, is met with a general murmur of dissent from most of the crew. We can't just throw it overboard, says Brad. Talk to the captain. This could be a discovery of some sort. A big deal. We should keep it on board and take it back to dock. Captain's asleep, I reply. Well, then wake him up. You're the chief officer. Tell him it's an emergency. I look around at the crew. They're clearly in agreement with him. I turn to our engineer. Even you, Angie? You think we should keep this thing on board? He shrugs. Sorta. I relent. Fine. I'll speak to Troy. I turn from the object and head back into the body of the boat, striding the length of the narrow little corridors to the captain's quarters. One of the fishermen catches up with me as I approach. "Charlie!" he calls out to me. "Wait, man, hold on. I think you're right, you know, about the thing. I'm thinking we should just chuck it back into the sea." "Yeah, I know, man," I reply, barely slowing my step. "I hear you. I might yet dump it back into the sea myself. I will speak to the captain first, though. I said I would after all." We stumble a little against the walls as a wave knocks into the side of the trawler. The rain comes down a little harder against the roof. I knock on the captain's door and then push it immediately open before waiting for a response. "Hey, Troy, wake up, man." Troy crumbles from the darkness, and I see the rough shape of his body turn over on the mattress. "Troy, damn it, wake up. We need you to come check out what we hauled in from the sea. It's important." The man grunts again and waves one of his hands in a kind of shameless, shooing motion. "Troy, I wouldn't be waking you up if it weren't important. I don't really want it on our ship any longer than needs be." "Oh, can't it wait till morning, Charlie?" he grumbles. "You know damn well how hard it is to fall asleep on this thing. Troy, this is an alien-looking son of a bitch." "Is it dangerous?" "Not actively, but is it moving? Flashing lights? Speaking?" "No, it's not particularly animate, but then it can wait till morning. I'll have a look at it then. Now fuck off before I lose any tired." "Troy, just get your ass out of bed and fuck off, Charlie." I sigh and draw the door to a close. Omar is still stood there, just looking at me. "We'll deal with it come tomorrow," I say to him. Fuck it. I'm not thrilled by the object's presence, but what the hey, it doesn't look dangerous. It's just weird. I guess it can wait until morning. I return to the dock and order the lads to get the fish down into the cold storage. And then I turn in for the night myself. Might as well. There's fuck all else to do. I'm more or less used to sleeping in the conditions the ocean provides by now, but it still feels like a particularly rough one tonight. I try to get some rest, as the night shift officially take over their roles on the ship. But as I drift off into an uneasy slumber, my dreams are twisted and frightening. I find myself alone, in the dark, looking around. There is only water in all directions. My arms and legs kick and push gently to keep me in place. The surface is far, far ahead and out of sight. And below is the void, bottomless, watery nothing. Down, down, down it goes, and I find myself drawn down into it. Pulled by an invisible current, I struggle as the pressure tightens around my head, and I am swallowed by the darkness of an ocean below. The water around me grows colder and colder, and I can only shiver in horror as my blood turns steadily to ice. Dark towers rise up from the gloom beneath my feet. I am drawn ever deeper into the midst of a poisoned city, ancient and long forgotten and terrible beyond words. Abandoned, it would seem, but alive in a way that I could only sense for certain in the dream, but cannot explain to you now. The material of the rising towers is the same as that of the object. Slimy, black and tar-like, yet emanating a disturbing and uncomfortable warmth. One that I should, by logic, be drawn to, given the freezing nature of my surroundings. Yet, I find myself wanting to distance myself as far from the towering pillars and spires as possible. Down I go. Down, down, down. But gaps and arches in the ruined architecture reveal to me that the alien cityscape now extends far out in every direction. A humming rises up from the deep. Low, but growing louder and louder, reverberating up from the depths. and something moves in the darkness. "Charlie," it says to me. "Charlie." "Yo, Charlie!" My eyes crack open, and I twitch in fright as I am returned to the world of the awakened. Angie is staring at me from the door, silhouetted by the dim grey light of the corridor behind. There are other members of the crew out there too, I can tell. I grimace and rub my eyes, groaning as I sit myself upright in bed. This must have been how the captain had felt. I empathize with him at once. "What is it, Angie?" I grumble. But there was real alarm in the man's voice, and once I realized this, I awakened a little quicker than I would have otherwise. "Bryn's freaking everyone out. He won't stop swearing and cursing in his sleep, and he won't wake up either." A pause. "He is sick, Charlie." I grumble and stumble out of bed. "What's the matter with him, man?" "He don't look well, pale and leaking at the lips, and he keeps rambling, muttering about some city below the sea." My eyes flash with sudden horror, and I stare the engineer in the face. "He what?" Angie stutters, surprised at my reaction. The two fishermen, Ferris and Omar, stand behind them in the corridor, and I push past them all as I hasten through the corridor of the gently rocking boat to Bryn's quarters. I slam open the door and fumble for the switch, squinting as I flick it up, and the room is washed in sickly artificial light. There lies Bryn, groaning and muttering in his sleep, blanket half thrown from his body, legs sticking out the end at strange angles. In his skin. "Pale, Angie? Fucking pale, you said? What the hell is this?" Bryn is as white as a sheet and slick with sweat. Worse than that though, he looks decidedly wet. In his veins bulge black in his neck and chest and all the way down his right arm. He weren't this bad 5 minutes ago, I swear it, though we didn't turn on the light. Holy hell, this is above my fucking pay grade. We're taking the trawler back to shore. See if we can't contact a helicopter to meet us on the way back. This is insane. None of the crew are looking at me now though. They've all ceased listening. Their attentions focus on the man in the bed. My skin starts to crawl, and I slowly turn to look back at our boy Bryn. Diseased as he is, upon the mattress in the corner of his room. We watch in silence, us four, as Bryn retches and turns onto his side, falling from the bed to the floor of the room with a sickening squelch. A terrible and alien black fluid leaking from his nose and mouth. But as he falls, as he slips from the bed, his legs, the tops of which are covered by the sheet, remain exactly where they were. Bryn now ends at the torso, connected to the mess he has left behind on his mattress with a series of thick and oily black strands. He looks up at us, and his eyes roll over white. "Fuck!" someone shouts, and we crash into and elbow each other frantically, hastily retreating from Bryn's quarters, staring at the twisted remains of the man as he writhes against the floor. The ship rocks in the storm. "Bryn!" I force out, fighting against the throat that is closing in panic. "Bryn, are you in there, man?" "Rebuild," he mutters through retches, fluid leaking from his mouth. "Rebuild what has been lost. Her city crows, spawn for the spires." He hisses and starts to drag his ruined body across the metal floor towards us. "Jesus, no!" shouts Omar behind my left ear. "No!" We all stumble back, tripping up and out into the hallway. "Angie," I splutter. "Get everyone awake at once. Brett first. I need the fucker on the crane." I'm no idiot. This is the work of the object. I want it off the ship ASAP before it can do any more damage. Captain be damned. Angie nods and disappears off into the darkness of the corridors. I'm separated from the two fishermen. They back up into the corridor that leads to the deck, whereas I head further back towards my own quarters. Shut him inside, I think to myself. Close the damn door. But I am already too late. Bryn slithers out from his room, though he doesn't even look at me, He instead crawls instantly towards the fisherman, dragging his leaking body in the direction of the deck. I'm speechless. I have no idea what the hell I'm supposed to do with this man. My crewmate. The abomination. Omar and Ferris cry out in panic as they retreat, stumbling towards the lobby that leads to the deck. Omar does at least. Ferris stops and grabs a fire extinguisher from off the wall, raising it high above his head, jaw clenched and eyes wild and mad. Wait! I shout. Ferris! But the man ignores me and brings the extinguisher down hard towards Bryn's head as the former operator scrambles along the floor towards him. His aim is off, and he strikes Bryn in the shoulder and neck with a spray of ink-like murk. Bryn screeches, and to my horror, disconnects his jaw like a snake, ensnaring a good half of Ferris's lower leg in his teeth. Ferris screams and kicks, crashing into the wall and dropping the extinguisher. And Bryn tears out a chunk of the fisherman's leg. Not a small chunk either. Ferris drops like a tumbled stone, silent and shuddering, shocked to the core I should think. And Bryn continues along his way, snaking disgustingly from side to side as he hauls himself down the corridor, ever muttering to the backdrop of a low hiss in his throat. I go to the fallen fisherman. Ferris, I mutter. But, speak to me. But he just stammers and pales before my eyes as blood spurts and leaks out over the floor. This is insane, I murmur as I stare at the wound. This was not covered in aid training. I decided upon tearing the man's jacket from his shoulders and wrapping it tight around his leg. He finds his voice and screams out into the corridor as I apply the pressure and tie it off. It seems like the others are finally starting to come see what the hell is going on. Either that or NG was successful in waking them up. My heartbeat is quick and loud. I could feel it heavy in my chest as I look to my bewildered colleagues. The captain, dazed and clearly still half asleep. Behind him, and a good foot taller, Chef and Sean of the fishermen. Ferris! He exclaims, stumbling towards us and falling down onto his knees, checking the man over, lightly slapping at his cheek. Ferris, hang in there, man! Hang in there! Charlie? The captain says. Would you care to explain to me exactly what? Go to the fucking deck, Troy! Take a look at the object! It did this! Bryn smacked his hand across the thing like an idiot and... I don't know. Something happened to him. I'm rambling. I turn to Sean as I clamber to my feet. Keep an eye on him, okay? He nods. And I beckon Troy and Chef down the narrow metal hall towards the lobby, following the trail of dark, slimy grease that Bryn had left behind. To my left are a number of metal poles we use for sorting the fish when the occasion calls for it. I grab one now and suggest to the others that they should do the same. The lobby of the boat is empty, but beyond the glass windows, the dark and rainy decks shows us blurred shapes darting from place to place. Screams can be heard above the wind and the rains. The hell is going on out there? Troy mutters as we push into the world outside. Instantly buffeted by the rain and wind, squinting against the thrall in the darkness. The great grey waves froth against the ship's side, uncaring of the drama that unfolds on the deck. A flashlight beam crosses our field of vision, briefly illuminating Omar at the side of the boat. Another of the crew is stood beside him, Scott, I think. Omar's lower back is pressed against the rails as he stares in horror at the object. The great, black hexagonal shape, darker than dark in the midst of the storm. Omar! I call above the gale. Where is he? Where's Bryn? Omar cups a hand around his mouth and calls something back, but his words are lost in the wind. I can see him pointing though, right at the object. I can see that well enough. Chef, I say to the big man beside me. Aye, he replies. Get back inside and turn on the floodlights. Aim at center deck. He nods and hasten back in, and I turn to Troy to my left. He's fucked up beyond recognition, Troy, I say to him, as loud as is necessary. Bryn, he's fucking poisoned. So what the fuck is he doing out here, Charlie? Troy shouts back. And to that, I really have for him no answer. The edge of the captain's shadow is suddenly cast out long across the entirety of the boat, as one of the floodlight behind lurches into life with a slow and heavy mechanical click. Its angle changes, ever so slightly, until it points ahead to the center of the deck, right on the object as instructed. The new burst of light bids Omar and Scott temporarily shield their eyes, and also reveals a fellow to the left, the fisherman whose name I cannot remember, and Brett, Bryn's operational counterpart by the controls to the crane by the far side. This is chaos. From his current position, our remaining operator cannot see the horrors that the rest of us can.
What's happening?
He shouts out loud over a temporary lull in the sea's spray-tinted winds.
What is it?
But I find myself unable to answer. Hellfire and brimstone. Troy splutters beside me, eyes wide and fixed on the abomination ahead. The object does not shine in the light. It absorbs the powerful beam and only seems darker in comparison with its newly floodlit surroundings. The specks of seawater across its form, however, glitter brightly like false gems, as indeed does the moisture in the skin of our comrade Bryn. We watch him writhe and press himself up against the object with sickening desperation. His mouth is moving, though I cannot hear his speech. And with his jaw so distended and broken as it is, I cannot read his lips either. He turns from us and presses his face up against the object, pushing his forearm and torso against its slimy black surfaces. Dark and streaky strands beyond count connect his body to the form of the object, and as he pushes, he seems to be sinking into it, forcing himself into the actual object itself. It becomes difficult to tell where the man stops and the object starts. His skin at the edges begins to melt into the oily fluid. The physical barriers between the two break down before our eyes. I feel a rise of bile accompany a lurch in my stomach and force it down.
Charlie?
Troy shouts.
Shit, should we stop him?
Why the fuck are you asking me? You're the captain, are you not? I think to myself. But to tell the truth, I don't know either. Instinct tells me that we should be stopping this grotesque display at once. But on the other hand, I don't want to go anywhere near the thing. And whilst it hurts to admit, I can't help but feel like our decision at this stage wouldn't much matter. Surely by this point, we are too late. Fuck it. Gotta at least try. This is Bryn we're talking about. I step through the storm and onto the deck, the metal pole in my hand flashing in the glare of the beam light. Omar calls something out to me. But again, the man is not loud enough, and I don't hear him. Shaking fiercely and jaw clenched, I stride suddenly forward and jam the pole in the space between Bryn's steadily disappearing shoulder and the oozy black of the object. The noise it makes and the bizarrely, disturbingly mushy resistance are sensations I will remember for the rest of my life. The remainder of Bryn's head twists with the tightening of the dark strands that surround it, and he screeches at me, his lone visible eye wide and wide. I stagger back in horror, trying and failing to take the metal pole with me. In the end I was holding clatters against the deck as the others stuck in the mixture. Bryn's eyes, ever so pale, seem only all the paler now as his pupils has all but disappeared. He's gone. I back all the way up to the entrance of the lobby, never taking my eyes from the horrors ahead.
Troy, man, Captain, you need to order this thing to be dumped back into the sea. Now, our lives are about to get a whole lot worse. What the hell is going on over there?
Brett calls from the crane controls.
You're kidding me, Charlie?
The captain replies.
With a member of my crew inside? No way, I'll be tried for murder. Captain, use your eyes. You think anyone will believe this, Charlie?
The point is a valid one, but he is either ignoring or failing to feel the sense of impending doom that now weighs down ever so heavily upon us. Well, fine. If he doesn't have the balls to do it, I'll do it myself.
Brett!
I call out.
Dump this thing back into the sea, quick as you can.
He starts making his way towards us, stumbling a little in the winds around the edge of the dock.
You want me to dump it? Charlie, I thought we were taking it back to shore. This thing belongs in a museum. Jesus Christ.
I put my hands to my head and watch as the last of Bryn disappears through the membrane of the throbbing, oozing dark ship on the dock. Blobs of flesh and pieces of clothes are left stuck to the side, and they drip and drool down the deck with the rain.
Fine. Hey, everyone, get the hell inside, now!
I turn to Troy. You're going to take us back to dock this second, and I'm going to radio for an emergency helicopter. Aye. Troy mutters with a nod. Then, after a pause, right.
You heard the man. Everyone, back into the ship.
The captain and I turn hastily to try and return into the safety of the lobby, but we find ourselves face to face with our boy Ferris, jacket still wrapped tight around his leg, but standing upright now, right in the doorway, if a little skewed perhaps. Black liquid leaks from his lips, and his eyes are staring, wider than they have any right to be. Lightning strikes the sea in the distance, and we recoil in sudden terror. Behind him, it is Sean, who now lays slumped on the floor. His eyes are closed, and I cannot tell if he is breathing. But there are bruises around his neck, and his face has been smeared in the dark substance that now coats the corridor, floor, and walls alike. Ferris? The captain splutters, and Ferris responds. The towers are close to completion. Spun for the spires. We are bound to rebuild. Troy. His speech is slurred, but I can still just make out his words. His skin has begun to leak. Our duty is plain. Fluid drips and oozes. Mother awaits our... And he becomes incomprehensible. He falls to the ground with a squelch, clutching at my legs as he does. I cry out in alarm and kick him away, shielding my eyes from a far-carried blast of sea spray sent up by the churning waves. The captain grabs a hold of Ferris's shirt by the shoulders and half drags, half throws him further down the deck as Omar and Scott reach the door. Brett is just behind and swears and curses in alarm at the scene.
Everyone inside!
Troy bellows. The fishermen push through the door at once. Brett, bewildered and uncertain, nonetheless does likewise. I hasten into the lobby as Troy slams the door shut behind him, and from the panel I make the request for an emergency helicopter. I sent out our coordinates, but I don't receive anything back, and we're a hell of a long way from shore. Troy, I say, but he knows. He makes off into the body of the ship, heading presumably to the upper level to steer us away, to begin our journey back to the coast. But just as he is about to step past Shaft, tending to the muttering, shivering Sean, he stumbles and hits the wall with a lurch of the boat. We all do. The ship's engine, it would seem, has just cut out. We drift in terrible silence across the surface of the roughening sea. All quiet, but for the lashing of the rain on the windows and the swell and distant roar of the waves and wind. I look around at the faces of my colleagues. Angie is missing, I realize. Captain? Omar murmurs, but the captain does not respond. He has stepped back up to the front of the lobby, and his eyes are fixed on the scene beyond the windows. With a pounding heart, I turn to follow his gaze. It's difficult to see through the rain-soaked glass, but the scene outside terrifies me in a way that I have never in my life experienced before. The object has begun to steadily leak. That much is clear. Dark fluid pours out and over the deck, slipping this way and that with the rocking of the boat. Ferris has huddled himself against the edge of the ship, his features illuminated ghostly pale in the glare of the beam light. He retches and twitches, but he is not my primary focus now. My focus instead is on the sea beyond. Out there, in the watery darkness, the sea froths and bubbles, out of sync with the churn of the waves, and the waters are pushed up and apart. An enormous, twisted shape rises up from the murk. I cannot make out its features through the glass, but It is a blight on the face of the ocean. A terrible blight indeed. We stare, all of us, out and into the raging waters. Something has arisen from the depths, blurred through the glass of the window and the walls of the rain. It is nonetheless obvious as something that does not belong. Brett is the first to speak. "Lads," he says quietly, "now just what the hell is going on?" He is met with silence. "Where is Bryn?" No response. The thing in the water dips below the surface, just for a second, then rises back up and out, higher than before. And whatever it is becomes clear as only a small part of a much greater whole. "Fuck it," Brett murmurs, and grabs the door to the deck, swinging it open and swinging it wide. It is caught at once in the wind and torn from his hand, slamming against the outside lobby wall.
"Jesus, Brett, get back inside!"
I shout over the gale. I turn and grab the captain by the front of his shirt.
"The engine room, Troy! Get the ship moving again! We head back to shore at once!"
Troy nods at me and stumbles away, pushing past Chef and the quivering Sean.
"Keep an eye out for Angie!"
I yell after him. "And Chef?" Chef looks up at me. "I would move the hell away from our boy Sean there if I were you." Sean twitches and groans. It becomes clear that the black liquid smeared all over his face and neck has become worse. It leaks like sweat from his skin. Curiosity is a powerful thing. And even though I have a much greater sense of the threat that faces us than Brett, I still fall victim to its call and push out onto the rainy deck of the trawler beside him, squinting and staring out to sea at the anomaly that has now defiantly pushed aside the waves. Up it rises. Up out of the water. It is difficult to see through the downpour in the darkness, but the initial shape that had caught our interest is no more than a crest, I now realize. A crest atop an alien shape, horrific in its strangeness. I hesitate to call the thing a head, as it bears no resemblance to any human head that I have ever seen, nor does it boast even a single face-like feature. Blood roars in my ears with the swell and crash of the sea. I look through the haze and the pour at the beast that has arisen from the depths. It is undoubtedly colossal in size, the length of a boat if not more. The crest is a picture of spines, thick grey-black flesh pulled taut and quivering between them in the storm. Below this crest is a body, or a head, roughly hammerhead sharkish in shape, though more definitively angled. This monstrosity has no obvious eyes, but a lone dark void, the size of a man and in the form of a diamond, shivers grotesquely in the center of its face. On either side of this feature are clusters of smallish holes in the skin, subtle graying lights flashing from within. A squirming, angrily writhing mass of thick tendrils ripples and swarms at the sea's surface as the rain falls, clustered around the thing's base where it meets the waves. And a low, sick sound reverberates from its form, the hole across its surface widening and contracting intermittently. Brett and I stare in silence, unable to tear our eyes away, frozen in place. I am vaguely aware of Chef. He has joined us on the deck and laid his gaze on the beast, and he falls to his knees in the puddles and begins frantically muttering in desperate prayer. As I stare out to sea and into the void at the center of the abomination, my dream returns to me. I see the twisted city and its dark and alien spires. My vision is blurred and uncertain, but I see it. I see the thing before me flow like a mist, from spire to spire. I see shapes breaking away and drifting to the surface. Mother. A flash of lightning to my right, far out above the waves, breaks the spell, and sudden movement from the object on the deck returns me to the world of the storm, drenched and iced to the bone. I grab Brett by the shoulder and drag him back. He stumbles and turns, and we watch as the object begins to pulse violently. The object that we so foolishly hauled from the water. Black ooze spurts out in jets and streams as it throbs and hisses, and it hardens and cracks, breaking apart like a shell and leaking poison out over the deck. poison, and a monster. Like a grey wet storm, it smacks to the deck with a squelch. Illuminated in the glare of the beam light as it is, its shadows are deep and sharp. It writhes and screams and tilts this way and that in the rain, deciding on a direction and slithering towards the sea. It turns to us as it approaches the edge. It looks back as it squirms its way up over the railing, rocking in the waves. And for better or for worse, we see its face. A hollow diamond fills the center. A void. But on either side of this shape are two bright and staring eyes. Pale blue, almost grey in their coloring. They are Bryn's eyes, and they reveal nothing but cold malice. Then the worm-like creature turns and slips clumsily over the rail and into the sea. And the great atrocity begins its descent. A deep and ethereal roar shivering out and under the boat as it does so. As the thing slowly disappears beneath the grey waters, a great many things then happen pretty much at once, all in the space of about 20 seconds. Ferris staggers to his feet, pale and shivering as he is by the edge of the boat. He grips the rail of the deck as it rocks from side to side. As he squeezes it with his fingers, fluid leaks from his palm in the manner that water leaks from a sponge. He clambers up onto the side, raises his head, and throws out his arms.
Ferris!
Someone calls from behind me. Omar perhaps, or Scott. But the man does not respond. The boat lurches, and he falls over the edge towards the sea. But before he hits the water, a slithering snake-like appendage bursts from the churning waves and wraps around his chest, drawing him down and into the dark of the deep. And he is gone. I never see him again. In the same 20-second period, the boat is surrounded, on all sides and far out into the sea. Dozens upon dozens of the smaller but still roughly man-sized and worm-like abominations raise their heads above the surface of the water. Their features vary, and it is hard to see in the current weather conditions anyway. But they all at least share that sick and disturbing hole in the center of their faces. I hear sounds of struggle behind me. I turn, dazed, to see the twisted and fluid-stained Sean, eyes wide and wild, grab one of the fishermen around the neck. He drags him to the edge. Omar cries out and stumbles after them, slipping on the soaked surface of the deck. Sean's head lolls from side to side, ghostly pale, but for the dark ooze that leaks from his eyes and mouth, and doesn't even hesitate as he reaches the edge of the boat. He throws himself over, and the fisherman caught in his grip is unable to keep himself on board. Both of them tumble over the side and into the sea. And, as with Ferris, that is the last time that I ever see them. Felix. Yes, that was the man's name. His name was Felix. And like Ferris and Sean, he is gone. This hectic half-minute culminates with the feel of something slamming into the underside of the ship. Chef slips and crashes to the side, but the rest of us keep our feet. The slam comes again. The boat is under attack.
Where is the captain?
I shout, turning and looking up to the glass of the level above the lobby, though it is too dark for me to see. If we don't get the trawler moving again, then this could be it. We're all going to die. The slam comes again. Brad grabs me by the shoulder and yells into my face.
What if it's after the fish, Charlie? We should dump it all before it's too late.
It's a reasonable theory, though a part of me believes it's more than that. Far, far more. But I want to live, and action is better than inaction, surely. So when he runs the length of the deck to the controls at the opposite end, swaying from side to side, I stagger backwards, pushing past the panicking chef and head into the lobby, hastily activating and turning the dials for the controls that will allow us to dump the contents of the cold storage back into the sea. The slam comes again. I feel mechanical movement beneath my feet, signifying that the fish are in the process of being released into the surrounding waters. I look up and out of the window through the rain, staring at the broken and cracked remains of the object in the center of the deck. The light catches in the fluid it leaks as it washes from side to side with the rocking of the ship. And then comes another slam, the fifth. And it will be the last. Our efforts, if they would have even helped at all, are too little and too late. The boat grinds and our ears are met with a series of terrible cracks. I watch the deck at the far side of the trawler begin to tip up in a way. At, to my horror, a different angle to the rest of the boat. The trawler rocks to the side, and to my dismay, it does not correct itself this time. We're going down. I stagger out onto the deck and shout out into the storm.
Brad, get back, quick! I'm coming!
I think I hear him shout. He was gripping onto the controls for the crane and cold storage at the far end, for balance presumably. But he releases them now and he starts to run the length of the deck as thunder rolls across the sea. The deck splits and he falls, trying and failing to hold on to the wet rail. I don't understand how the ship could be failing so quickly. Unless something is dragging it from below. With a sound that will stay with me till the end of my days, the trawler splits into two. The far end of the ship, the bow, the location of the crane, and my comrade Brett breaks entirely from the rear half and tips into the sea.
Brett! Brett!
I roar into the gale. As he falls, he turns to face the hungry waves, and he is lost forever behind a cloud of froth and spray. As with the others, he is gone. The trawler groans and creaks deliriously.
Lads!
Comes the call of a familiar voice from behind. Not from inside the lobby, but down the side corridor of the ship, between the walls of the hub and the railing. I turn and grab hold of the edge, looking down to the ship's stern. There stands the captain, his hand held high.
Are you getting into the lifeboat then or what? It's now or never.
He's right, of course. I look around for the others. I see Omar staring wide-eyed towards the lost section of the ship as it slowly sinks beneath the waves. But he stands alone.
Omar!
I stumble forwards and grab his jacket.
Lifeboat, now!
And before he can respond, I have already half-pushed, half-thrown him in the right direction. The door to the lobby is still cast wide open, and I shout a final call down into the body of the boat. There is no answer. I look all around me with desperate hope, but neither Chef nor Sean can be seen. Nor indeed can NG. I realize I haven't seen them since I asked them to go and wake everyone up. But it's too late for all that. With a heavy heart, I turn and stagger down the slippery deck towards the lifeboat. Quickly catching up with Omar and bumping into his back, we hasten into the lifeboat as Captain Troy does the same. With a metallic grind, he turns the lever that allows her descent, and the lifeboat jerks and jitters on its way to the sea's surface. The ship screams beside us as the lifeboat smacks into the water and we disconnect from the trawler's body. Troy sails the boat away from the wreckage as it sinks into the sea. And one by one, the trawler's lights are fizzled out with clangs and groans and distant whirs. All around us, those twisted worms slither about in the waters, just beneath the surface and blurred in the grey-white froth and churn. There's something still on the upper deck. Look! I shield my eyes from the Arctic wind, but I cannot see what Omar is talking about. Not until a brief flash of lightning reveals the silhouette of a figure stood stuck still in the engine room, visible behind the glass. NG, I think. It must be. But as quick as he appears, he is lost. Lost behind the dark glass as the ship is swallowed by the sea. The worms rise up out of the water. They writhe and squirm over the trawler's corpse. Their hissing is carried on the winds. The last of the vessel's lights fail, and the ship is plunged into total darkness. Our lifeboat has an engine, thankfully, and Troy sails it grimly and solemnly away into the night. One final roar echoes from the swirling waters that swarm the ship, and it is the last I hear or see of the monstrosities that plagued the final voyage of our accursed trawler. I shiver in the chill of the air. None of us speak. I try not to think about the endless depths that lie directly below us. I try not to think of the horrors that I now know lurk hungrily beneath. I try to keep away the resurfacing memories of my twisted dream. The dark spires made from the same material as the object. The storm fades as the hours pass. The winds ease. And soon, the only sound is the rumble of the engine as we power on through the mists of the night. We were found eventually, spotted by helicopters. A nearby vessel was rerouted and came to pick us up to return us to shore. I quit the industry the same day. Omar did likewise. I don't know what Troy plans to do. I still dream of that night. When I close my eyes, I see it. I see the colossal abomination that rose up from the sea, in the face of the worm that slithered from the shell of the object. I've done pretty much nothing since then but read. Read and read and read, to try and make some sense of the things I saw, of the things we all saw. I have found little, but what I have learned has worried me greatly. I have learned about a process called external fertilization, common in amphibians, aquatic creatures, and sea life and the like. A process in which the eggs of the females are fertilized outside the body. The sperm inseminates the egg in the open after it has been laid. I think about the object. I think about Bryn. And I think about my terrible dream. My dream of the enormous, endless, undersea city. Its angular spires and shapes and shadowy towers. A sunken city made entirely of the same material as the object. If indeed it is even a city at all.